Whoosh! Hello, BookTube! So when I started this channel, I really only had one thought, which was I need to talk about books to someone ASAP. And so that was my thinking going into this channel. So when I started it, and in several videos since I started it, I have said everyone knows that you should read more and like why you should read and the benefits of reading. I just took it for granted. I assumed that you all knew that reading was important, and I still kind of do, but I thought we could make an entire video about it today. There is nothing scientific about what I'm about to tell you. In fact, it's possible it's scientific, but I have done no research on this. This is based on my observations or what I've read or what I see in myself and others. And it's really just a bunch of things that I think are related to reading and just the benefits of reading. Obviously, there are benefits to reading, but we're going to discuss specific ones so that hopefully you'll be more motivated to read when the time comes and you have to choose between Netflix and a book. So, number one benefit, well, in no particular order, but the first one we're talking about is improved memory. Now, this morning, my brother was asking me if I had seen a specific movie. He was like, I'm pretty sure you saw this movie, right? It was Mission Impossible, and I was like, I don't know if I saw that movie or not. And the way I was able to remember it, I thought about all the context around it. Now, this might not seem like it relates to reading, but hold on just a second, because it does. And I said, oh, was that like New Year's Eve 2015 and we watched such and such afterwards? And he was like, I don't know. And I was just able to picture the context, and it was dark and we were working on a puzzle and it was New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, and I remembered the TV show that we watched after we watched Mission Impossible. And after I thought of all that context together and then he started describing the movie, then I was like, oh, yes, that was when all these other things happened. And my mom and my brother just looked at me like, you're crazy. Like, how do you remember all these irrelevant details and you couldn't remember the plot of the movie? But that is how I think, and I believe part of that is because of reading and the context of the book, and then the context of you reading the book. Wherever you are, you tend to have the book and the place burned into your memory. And I think there's just a lot of connections between the two. You remember the place because of the book, or you remember the book because of the place. Like, when I think of a certain book, I can picture exactly where I was reading it and what we were there for and why and all these other things. So you don't always remember that for every single book, but for several books that you've only read once in particular, it's easy to picture the place and the book and link them. So I think reading helps you draw those kind of connections and helps you improve your memory in that area, in making connections and actually remembering things, and other areas. Number two, stress relief. I read somewhere a long time ago, so it's not necessarily true, but I believe it with all my heart, that 5 minutes of reading does more to relieve your stress than going outside for a walk, than meditation or yoga, than drinking tea, or just sitting in silence. Like, reading a book, the rhythm of the words, and sitting still, that is the most soothing thing. Also, it's a story most likely, so you're escaping, kind of. I don't read to escape, but a lot of people do, so the idea that you're getting into a story to escape is plausible. Number three, wider vocabulary and spelling skills as a bonus, but mainly wider vocabulary is what we're talking about. And this is just because the more you read, the more words you're exposed to, not bad words, but just the more big words or Old English words you're exposed to. For example, I had a discussion with someone the other day about the word wheelbarrow, and they thought it was wheelbarrel, B-A-R-R-E-L, and I was like, no, it's wheelbarrow. And I'm pretty sure I caught that at some point reading the Little House on the Prairie series. I don't know where else I would have picked that up, because you have to see certain words in print to know what they how they're spelled and what they mean. You need to see them in context. The downside of reading and your vocabulary is that sometimes you will pronounce words wrong because you've only seen them written. But that's okay because we have dictionaries and a lot of them have pronunciation apps and widgets and stuff. So yes, wider vocabulary and spelling skills in general go along with reading just because you're exposed to more words. Number 4, problem-solving skills, especially if you're reading fantasy or fiction, or even if you were reading nonfiction about business strategy, you will see yourself as a hero and you need to find the solution to the story. It makes you more of a leader and it makes you think critically about the problem and how are we going to get out of this, which is really, really good, especially if you are caught at an interview and realize that you forgot to pack the right pair of shoes, and then you're like, okay, what are the possible solutions? You don't panic, you just go into what are the possible solutions. So I guess it makes you more logical as a person and increases your problem-solving abilities. Number 5, increased creativity. So many readers I know are writers, and so many writers I know are readers. And it's not just in writing that we see creativity come out, because a lot of this can just be the way that you speak or the way that you paint or play music or act on stage. Reading has a lot to do with all the arts, and I think it's really important that you're exposed to a wide variety of literature so that you can use your favorite bits and pieces and make your own art. Number 6, the ability to recognize literary forms and references. If you are watching a movie and someone says something and you go, that's a Shakespeare quote, that is one of the most exciting things in the entire world. And it might not be a Shakespeare quote. It could be a literary reference or a picture or a pattern that you see throughout literature. Thomas C. Foster, this is his second book, but he wrote How to Read Literature Like a Professor. And it really, really shows you all the different literary forms and how basically everything that we write today is based off of like the Bible and Shakespeare and like Roman mythology and stuff. So number 7 is wider knowledge base. In general, whether you're reading nonfiction or fiction, you'll learn a lot through reading. I read something the other day on Twitter and it said reading doesn't make you smarter or something like that. Or it said you can't learn from reading. And I was like, that is the biggest lie I've ever seen. Obviously, that person is spending more time on Twitter than actually reading books. So my goal in life is to spend more time reading books than on Twitter. But that aside, wider knowledge base in general is a huge, huge pro of books. Of course, there are some things that you read and you're like, that's so cool. When am I ever going to get to use that? But it's true that those things that you think you will never end up using might just be really, really relevant in some weird random situation, because life's going to throw a lot at you. You never know when you're going to need some random facts. There was actually a book I was looking at the library the other day. I don't remember the name of it, but it was just a bunch of short, like one-page descriptions of different theories and different like histories of words and gadgets, and it was really cool. It taught me the difference between cement and concrete, and I didn't really think I was ever going to need to know that, but I guess if I'm ever talking about cement and concrete, I'm going to know the difference now and be able to use it intelligently in a conversation. So, wider knowledge base is number 7. Number 8 is critical thinking skills. I kind of already touched on this, but reading basically helps you with the SAT. That's all I'm going to say, is that the way that you read and then have to interpret and analyze passages in the SAT, that's really something that you can only get good at by reading a lot and analyzing a lot. Like, you have to read books and understand what's going on, and then you'll be able to describe it and regurgitate it to other people. Number 9, ability to express oneself. I think this kind of ties into vocabulary, but more than that and more than the creativity. The ability to express oneself is basically just being able to communicate effectively, which is one of the highest rated things that people are looking for in a future employee. I read that in my speech textbook. It said that people really are looking for others who can communicate well and listen well. And if you're sitting there with a book for hours, you're basically listening to the book just playing in your head. So if you can listen to a book for hours, you can certainly listen to other people. And if you can read and then what was I going with that? I don't remember. Lost my train of thought. Okay. Ability to express oneself. This is really ironic. Okay, number 10. Love of learning and story. This is just a bonus one, really. It's so that you will realize the power of story. A lot of people, sadly, in America today, don't realize the power of story and history and how our whole life and our whole world is one big story written by the Creator God. And I think once you start to read fiction specifically, you will learn to love stories and see that your life is a story, and then you'll be able to live better and operate better and find your purpose. So that's all I have for today. I know it was a really long video, 11 minutes, but we got through it. And those are the 10 benefits of reading. And don't forget, the book was better.